This episode of Podcast Portugal is brought to you by expatsportugal.com, your trusted online community for everything related to moving to, living in, or investing in Portugal. What really sets Expats Portugal apart is its welcoming, knowledgeable community. Whether you're just starting to explore the idea of life in Portugal or you're already settling in, you'll find live webinars, expert Q&As, member discounts, a vibrant forum, and friendly in-person meetups happening across the country. And just for Podcast Portugal listeners, you can get 15% off membership by using the code Podcast Portugal at checkout. That's Podcast Portugal, all one word and in caps. Visit expatsportugal.com today and start your Portugal journey with the support of people who've been there, done that, and are ready to help you do it too. This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. Today we're joined by Bárbara Messias, one of the voices behind... Yeah, did I get it right? Perfect. One of the voices behind PsychedeliCare, a European citizens' initiative aiming to bring psychedelic-assisted therapy into the mainstream of European mental health care. Portugal already has quite a forward-thinking approach to drug policy, but PsychedeliCare goes a step further, advocating for legal, regulated access to therapeutic treatments using substances like MDMA and psilocybin. With the goal of gathering 1 million signatures across the EU by January 2026, this movement is part of a growing call to rethink how we treat depression, PTSD, addiction, and much more. Let's hear from Bárbara about what's at stake, what's possible, and how Portugal fits into the bigger picture. Bárbara, a big welcome to you.
Hi, thank you for having me and the opportunity to speak a little bit about psychedelic care.
You're very, very welcome. It's a really interesting subject. I know veterans that come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they're finding a lot of great benefit from some of these therapies, although it's still as far as I know, in research stage. What drew you personally to this movement, and how did you get involved with psychedelic care?
So maybe a little bit about myself. I'm a law graduate, and I discovered psychedelics in 2021, and I was at the time and now still I read a lot into development, and in this kind of subjects you encounter psychedelics a lot as a tools to self-development. So that's the context in which I studied. And that year I had a episode of quite severe anxiety. I was quite dysfunctional, and I used psychedelics for the first time like 9 months later that episode, and without me really expecting, it really helped me not getting over my anxiety, but maybe stretching my tolerance to feel anxiety, and also maybe deepening my internal tools to deal with it. So it was something that I was never expecting, and just deepened my curiosity around it. So so I then started to collaborate with Safe Journey, and that's through them I got to learn about psychedelic care, and I've been involved over a little over a year now. Currently, I'm coordinating the Portuguese team. And also last year I started my master's in sociology of law, where I've been researching the history of prohibition, and now there's kind of this imbalance between what the law says and what the science says. And I'm actually researching for my thesis about psychedelic care specifically as a bottom-up, a grassroots movement in this psychedelic field.
Yeah, so fascinating subject. Why do you think there is such an imbalance between, what the research says currently states with the science and the law? Is it just because the law is just slow to catch up? I know I know what we're a little bit of a victim these days with a lot of what we see online, and it's very, very hard to digest and to assimilate, what is research based, what is sort of a fad, what is a fashion. It's very hard for people to find, and so there needs to be like the law or the National Medical Service, which kind of is a benchmark for our understanding and safety. For not an exact example, but stem cells for I know there's a lot of MMA fighters that can't get stem cell treatment in the US because it's against the law, basically. So they fly over to Mexico where there's a big surgery and they get stem cell treatment, and they all advocate it, saying it's brilliant and their joint health is really, really good. But it's like there must be a reason why the FDA or whatever bans stem cell treatments. So in terms of psychedelic care, so how do you sort of explain that whole area of where can we find trust in how we treat our own personal healthcare?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think psychedelics, in a way, are subjected now to a lot of stigma due to historical reasons. First, psychedelics, they were, or not psychedelics, but maybe psychedelics were introduced in the West in last century. In the 40s, they were LSD was first synthesized in Switzerland, and also psilocybin was introduced to the West through through a journalist. And I think this hype with psychedelics started a lot in America, and with the hippie movement, and it's very associated with counterculture. So it gained a lot of stigma and a lot of weight. It's a subject with a lot of weight. Also, they are very powerful tools, and they have not always been used in the safest contexts. So there's, yeah, I think a lot of our role in psychedelic care in society is to inform the people about the benefits that these substances have, and also destigmatize and raise this debate on drug policy, even, because, yeah, I think it's very much a given right now that the war on drugs was not necessarily a war on substances, but a war on people. And criminalization that started mainly in the US, or the US started that trend of the war on drugs. That was a way of also criminalizing certain groups and minorities, and more power and or less powerful groups. And yeah, I think the world then was, because of the United Nations conventions, most of the world ratified these conventions. So this trend of looking at psychedelics as a very dangerous thing was kind of all the whole world kind of took on into it. And also there was some communication
it's kind of
efforts.
Strange as well that Portugal sort of stepped out of that worldview as well. It's well renowned, all over the world, that Portugal has this more lean. Well, I'm not saying I don't really understand the law so well, but it's not necessarily a leniency; it's decriminalization. I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, exactly. What happened in Portugal was that in the 90s, 1% of the population was addicted to heroin, and we had every family knew at least someone closer or not, that had been affected by a drug issue. And the way the Portuguese government solved this was by decriminalizing drugs and focusing more or looking more at the consumer, not as a criminal, but as someone that needs some kind of help and support. And that, I think, that worked pretty well. But it's I don't think Portugal, and maybe this isn't just my personal opinion, I don't think Portugal is a country that because of that has less stigma around psychedelics. I think although the law uh, was quite innovative, uh, in socially there's still the word drugs. It's very has a lot of weight around it. So I think socially and legally maybe it's also not quite in sync there. So it's also our job at PsychedeliCare to inform the public through also the work of our partners in Portugal. We have Safe Journey as our partners in space, and Cosmic Care, and Heal Forum also, and some other partners. But basically, these are the voices in Portugal that are more active on psychedelics. And I think in the last 20 years, because as I said, psychedelics or LSD was synthesized in the 40s, and they were very promising as drugs to treat alcoholism, for example.
Yeah.
They were discovered, and they were simply a psychiatric drug at the time. I don't know. Some historical accounts say that Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, was somewhat an advocate for psychedelics, and they also helped in his own journey. So this is for alcoholism. It was a very important thing back then, and some other conditions. But then there was a full campaign in order to stop all the research, and it was after the 60s. It was really difficult to research with psychedelics. Maybe almost impossible in some countries to get it. But now there's what it's called the psychedelic renaissance, and it's basically around 20 years of rigorous double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trials, and for conditions like depression, for PTSD, and they are used as almost last resource treatment. So meaning that when you try all the conventional treatments and nothing is working, they can be used. Psychedelics assisted therapy can be used as a way to treat these conditions.
Yeah,
and they differ a lot from the antidepressants and from the maybe more conventional medicines, as these ones are focusing a lot on the symptoms and treating on a more symptomatic level. And psychedelics are more looking at the cause and the trauma, and they are what many people call these meaning makers, because they really help people find meaning. And there's also this other component of neuroplasticity, which is just to treat some conditions. This is extremely important, the neuroplasticity, because some of these conditions like depression, like PTSD, or like they are very much about this rigidity and very rigid patterns of thinking. And psychedelics introduce some kind of cognitive flexibility that helps changing the way that the brain works and thinks. So that's, I think, the main difference there.
Can we just switching putting a light on. Basically, it's like switching flicking a switch. Sorry, and just to give a different way of seeing things. And I mean, my personal opinion of drugs, I think we have to accept that when you go through a certain age, when you're younger, you're going to experiment recreationally with drugs. I think we need to universally accept that. And me, with a 5-year-old son, I'm absolutely dreading the days when he's going to be going out and not telling me what he's doing. And the only reason for this is because I was young once as well. So I lived in the 90s in London when we had all of the big rave scene going on. So I know what goes on. And my biggest fear is things like fentanyl, and the fact that you just don't know what is in what you're buying. Now, I think we're backed up by research, and so understanding how either therapy centers or even extending it to the point that, you're going to accept the kids are going to go to a festival. Why not provide at the door, some kind of MDMA or something which is being tested, is pharmaceutically graded. You have on-site, you have guides, or you have on-site paramedics or whatever you need to do, whatever comes out of the research. So not that you can control the experience, but that you can just offer a safe experience. Because as humans, I think it is our right to take whatever journey that we want to do. But we need to be firstly educated about it and the possible reactions. And we need to have a safe environment to experiment. Just saying no is not realistic, just because people are always going to find a way to get drugs, and then that causes the criminality, and then it causes the tainted fentanyl just completely freaks me out. That just a tiny microscopic amount of fentanyl can mean death. And I think it's prevalent in most of any type of white powder or whatever people buy today illegally. I think you're running a risk of dying every time you take any of that. So that freaks me out. And I think encouraging a drug policy which tests, which provides safe experiences and safe vehicle for those experiences with a backup of paramedics, even if it's at a dance or whatever, and then to the other end of the extreme, like what you're talking about, therapy centers. Now, how those therapy centers take on, how they operate it will come out of the research. So I really in favor of what you're doing. It's like, okay, let's open our minds to it and let's create the research, and then let's have a look at the law and let's make some decent policies.
Exactly. That you're touching a super important thing, which is seen as kind of an alternative to prohibition, that is harm reduction. In Portugal, the decriminalization was followed by a lot of harm reduction efforts. We have, for example, PsychedeliCare in Portugal, which is an NGO, an organization that is testing drugs anonymously and freely and for free, either in Lisbon, or also they are in some festivals like Boom Festival, like Waking Life festivals happening in Portugal. Because that's what happened when places have a no drug policy. It means that they don't have harm reduction efforts. Either that's countries, either that's parties, either that's festivals, and to not have a harm reduction efforts in these kinds of places that people are using drugs, it's very damaging.
This episode is brought to you by Flow Sports and Flow Grappling, the streaming platform dedicated for fans of grappling, rugby, basketball, volleyball, swimming, cycling, and much more. If you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you want to head straight to Flow Grappling. They stream all the major events, IBJJF, ADCC, WNO, and the Pan Ams. And yes, even the IBJJF European Masters, where you could have watched me win gold. Tap the link in the show notes or go to podcastportugal.com to subscribe and get access to all the action.
Because it's what you were saying, it's what in sociology of law we call the impossible prohibitions. It's things that it is not simply possible. It was never in human history, or since the prohibition. Never since the prohibition. I mean, not necessarily in human history,
Yeah.
because the prohibition is only something from the last century, the 20th century. But never since the prohibition, people stopped using drugs in general, and psychedelics as well. And this leads me to two important points. One is that psychedelics, they have actually been used by certain indigenous communities for centuries, if not millennia, and the West only discovered them last century. Basically, of course, they maybe were used in different contexts than ones we typically use them now, like in a party setting or for therapy. But they have been looked by these certain communities, as very sacred uh, medicines, and maybe not maybe not to the psychedelics we usually see, like LSD, because it's synthesized by humans, but mushrooms, but psilocybin for sure. Some plant medicine like ayahuasca, like ibogaine, more common in Africa. So yeah, this is a big part of our human history, actually, whereas prohibition is something only from last century. And the other thing is that indeed these things around drug policy, they're very interesting, but the EU doesn't have much competence around that, because everything that is drug policy, it enters in public health arena, and that's something that the EU doesn't have competence to legislate on. So um, our initiative, PsychedeliCare, doesn't really uh, is not really so focused on public health, but it's more focused on the realm of medicine and using these tools, the psychedelics, as a way of treatment, as they are helping a lot of people and with certain conditions. And some countries like Australia has allowed MDMA therapy. Some states in the US, like Oregon, Switzerland as well. Portugal, we also have some clinics providing ketamine assisted therapy and ibogaine as well. And not only clinics, actually, in Portugal, with public hospitals, we also have.
Oh, really?
And yeah, public hospitals. And recently, like in I think April, maybe, ketamine or esketamine was approved as a drug that can be refunded by this treatment can be refunded by the government. So yeah, that's I think we are doing some steps towards regulating these kinds of things. But I think probably the country that in Europe is the most forward with this is Czech Republic. In June, the lower chamber of the parliament, they approved psilocybin assisted therapy. So it's a really big step.
It's really interesting. I mean, if we sort of step back a little bit and look at the human condition, we talked a little bit about psilocybin being used for centuries in sort of ancestral ceremonies and these things, and perhaps in my thought that I've got now that perhaps a lot of Western history was very affected by Christianity, and we had a spiritual experience, should we say, when we went to church, and perhaps now that is, I wouldn't say maybe it's fading a little bit. So we seem to have a human condition to search. And in with that searching, perhaps it means that we are lacking something. And there might be groups of people that will find that sort of feeling, that lacking feeling, with going to take drugs or getting into addiction or addiction cycles. And so, I think if you have to search, it means you're missing something. So I think to allow the human spirit to go on these more internal journeys or even external journeys, because I think when you go to a festival, we're seeing. I personally feel there's like deeper meaning in these experiences. Like there is people coming together. They're experiencing the same vibrations of music. These vibrations of music are being enhanced by whatever substances, but also enhanced by the fact that you're looking around at other people and they're smiling and happy. And I think that these are things that perhaps in our history that we felt when we went to church. We had a sense of community and a sense of taking us from digging potatoes to something higher, and to sound and music and singing and these experiences. And I think perhaps in our society now, we are working a lot. We have a very day-to-day stresses of money, finances, the media piling full of depressing things. And I think the human condition is to search, to have a communal feeling which is beyond that. And I think that this, well, I mean, we could. I'm guessing here we're calling it psychedelic therapy, right? It's not just because we have an illness that we might seek therapy. It might be that we want to go on a journey to take us beyond and to see meaning, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, finding meaning is a very big component with psychedelics. We recorded a video that is available on YouTube with PsychedeliCare by a patient in Switzerland that he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And he was in his 30s, he had a wife, children, he was in the middle of his career. And so a cancer diagnosis can be extremely ground shaking. And he was subjected to to LSD-assisted therapy, as it's legal in Switzerland for Swiss citizens that are facing end of life threatening anxiety. And he's alive now. He was able to survive the disease. And he also used the LSD as a part of his treatment. And he recalls this as one of the most maybe impactful experiences in his life. And it really helped him to find meaning, and this means connection. So he felt more connected with his family, with the peers around him, but also with himself, with his emotions. He felt like he would judge less. And I think that's many people's experience, and also that's exactly what you are saying, that people are lacking this sense of meaning and hope. I think that's the one of the most important things with psychedelics, and there's a lot of studies also around that, how our society is kind of navigating in this very nihilistic, meaningless world. And for example, our teenagers now, they have the highest rates of suicide ever. So these kinds of definitely these kinds of experiences, they deepen our connection with the world around us, and also inside.
I want you to imagine a scenario now where we gather the UN, the United Nations. We gather all of the leaders of the United Nations, and they go through a psychedelic therapy session together. I wonder what would be the outcome for the world after that. It would be amazing.
Something really interesting about this is there have been accounts of Asian tribes using psychedelics for solve their conflicts.
Yeah.
So psychedelics for resolving societal issues. Maybe it's something very, very well. It's kind of wishful thinking at this moment, and we are focusing a way smaller thing right now. But it's something very, very interesting, and I think it's. I'm blocking it now.
Yeah. How do you think we can help? How can Podcast Portugal? What can we do to help with? I know that you need 1 million signatures. How are you doing so far? And where can we direct people to get involved, to learn more, to see a little bit more about what you're doing? And just a simple signature is going to go a long way, right?
Definitely. So maybe I would speak a little bit more about PsychedeliCare.
Yep.
European Citizens Initiative is. Basically, this is a tool since 2012 that allows citizens to come together and do a petition to the European Commission. But this is a bit different than a petition because it acts actually as a legislative trigger coming from the bottom. And so this is the only kind of trigger that the EU has that comes from the citizens. So it's a very important thing. There was already since 2012, 10 ECIs, European Citizenship Initiative, that were able to meet the numeric threshold, the 1 million signatures, and something was done about their topic. For this year, 2 were actually able to reach the 1 million signatures: My Voice, My Choice, and Ban Conversion Therapies. Both of them, they were able to collect these 1 million signatures. But yes, as you see, it can be about many different topics, and ours is focused on therapies and the legal and safe advancements for psychedelics in all EU, as we believe, for example, Czech Republic shouldn't be alone in advancing in this field. Because this would lead to citizens in the European Union flying from one country to the other to get these kinds of treatments, right? So it's something that should be we should all grow together. And basically what we do is collecting signatures. Then we need 1 million signatures. In Portugal, we need 15,120 signatures, but a little over than that, actually. And we also want to, as I said before, inform the public, raise the debate around drug policy and psychedelic benefits. And we do this through collecting signature efforts and events. We had an event in the European Parliament in February, as it was the launch event of PsychedeliCare. We had scientists in our panel, but also politicians like Tilly Metz. She's a part of the Greens. And Tommy Tommy is a part of the conservatives side, and we had over than 100 people flying from all over Europe belonging to PsychedeliCare to attend this event. We had also 100 more online. And at the time, this politician, Tommy, he said that these kinds of events in the European Parliament are never so full.
Yeah.
There was this event was really beautiful because there was this energy within the room of renovation, even to be speaking about psychedelics in a very institutional setting, and a room like in the European Parliament is refreshing. And also, yeah, I think there's a lot of this is to say also that there's a lot of very dedicated support to PsychedeliCare. We are more than 400, and everything is volunteer based. We are completely grassroots, but yeah, 400 volunteers in more than in 18 countries in the EU. And we also have many of the support of European psychedelic organizations like Parea, like Psychedelics Europe, and also many of the main figures in the psychedelics field are supporting us, like Michael Pollan, Rick Robin, Paul Stamens, just to name a few. Um, and yeah, maybe I could now speak a little bit more about the specific requests that we asked to the European Commission. Yeah, so basically, we are collecting signatures in order for the European Commission to be obliged to answer to 3 specific requests that they already said that they had competence over. Because for us, in order for the European Citizens Initiative to be confirmed and to be registered, the Commission has to confirm that these requests are within their action. So our request is, one is we want to create a standards for the application of psychedelic-assisted therapy in Europe. This means for therapists, for example, who is a therapist, what kind of education they have, more formal or informal one. If the therapist himself has some type of support, or basically what the treatment would look like for all Europe. Besides that, we are asking for more investment from the European Union to be allocated to the investigation of psychedelics also in Europe. There are a study called PsyPal that is funded by the European Union. It's happening in many European countries, but Portugal is one of them through Champalimau. And besides these two, we want the European Union to adopt a common position within the rescheduling of these substances, about the rescheduling of these substances when it comes to the UN. So yeah, it's basically taking this issue by the root, because the reason for investigation to be so hard is that these substances, and yeah, these substances are scheduled as Schedule 1, which means that they have it is said legally that they are very unsafe, and they have no recognized medical use, which science says it's not true. It's actually psychedelics like psilocybin, like LSD. They are rated as one of the safest drugs, and alcohol, for instance, rates as one of the least safe. Together with heroin, crack, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there has been quite a lot of I can't remember the guy's name, but there was some professor who he's done a lot of research into addiction, and he was saying some very interesting things that it's not the drugs that you necessarily get. I mean, I don't know whether he's a little bit a bit revolutionary, but he said it's because your addiction stems from past traumas, and the drugs you seem to get addicted to the drugs because of past traumas, as opposed to if you are not getting to the addiction type personality from past traumas, then the drugs can be used more safely. I mean, he takes heroin. He's a professor of some university. He takes heroin and doesn't, and he says he doesn't get addicted, which is quite strange. But I mean, I don't think we're talking that extreme, right?
No, not necessarily. I think the therapies are more. There are therapies with psychedelics to treat addiction.
Yeah, ibogaine, isn't it? Yeah.
For example, but yeah, there is definitely a social component of addiction. Is not only a biological thing. So yeah, there are some drugs like alcohol that many people are extremely addicted to alcohol, and even if not the substance itself, the setting when in that occurs. But the thing is, and here we're not talking about therapies necessarily, but I think there are many things that have a very high risk that we completely socialize and a culture, or we brought in our culture, like drinking alcohol, like climbing a mountain, or a rock. So these are things that are done by humans in an educated manner, and psychedelics could be no different. There are many risks associated with taking psychedelics, also depending on the setting, but the education, it's a very important thing in order to introduce this in society in a more conscious manner. But as I said before, our focus with PsychedeliCare is not necessarily on personal consumption, because this would not be within the legislative capacity of the EU, but it's more the regulation of these therapies, and these therapies use psychedelics in a very controlled setting, in a very controlled manner.
Yeah, it actually, when we're talking about, you're talking about alcohol and say tobacco, smoking cigarettes, and it actually brings up in my head quite an important point. We're talking about national health systems, and I personally sometimes I feel a little bit annoyed when I see people. I mean, it's hard to be annoyed with people that possibly have problems, but I do get a little bit annoyed when I see people abusing alcohol and cigarettes, and you can see it's making them sick, and they're going to then rely on the health service, which we all pay for. But more importantly, there is a limited amount of time and resources that the National Health Services can provide. And what that does, it distracts their attention from issues which probably are more like cancer or disease, or things which could be alcohol and cigarettes. You're creating an illness within yourself, and then you're relying on the public health system, which has short resources, which could be applied to other areas of people that perhaps is more accidental that they got sick. That for me creates a little bit of a concern. And perhaps with these therapy centers, you're talking about, people can go there, but they will have an element of tax on them, which could then be indirectly or directly going back into awareness campaigns, education about illegal drugs or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely, what I really appreciate what you're doing and what's happening now is this, it's opening the debate. I think that's the most important thing. It might take a long time. It might feel, trying to go to the EU and trying to get this whole monolith of what all of our countries together to sit down to talk about something and then to put it into law. But the important thing is that it's being done and it's being started and it's growing. And yes, these things take a long time.
It can be faster, yeah, and it can be faster by signing our petition.
Yeah.
Because we are really accelerating this type of debate within the political field and the European politics. So I really I ask everyone listening this podcast to sign our initiative.
Mm-hmm.
You can find the link in our website, psychedelic-care.eu.
Okay.
I believe we're also linking it in the podcast, right?
Yeah, what we're going to do is we'll put that link, so they'll go to your website, psychedelic-care.eu. The link will go in the show notes. It'll go on the Spotify and Amazon podcasts and YouTube podcasts and Apple podcasts. And in the show notes, you'll be able to directly link to your website. And go on there, people. Read all about it. Make sure that you have a good understanding of what you're signing. And if you believe in it, and I'm sure you will, because it makes a lot of sense, put your signature down and let's make some change.
Yes, exactly. We are really not asking for much here, just for these therapies to be more investigated, for more funding to be attributed, and for more regulation on them. And these therapies, they have very good already scientific background supporting them. So,
I can see huge potential. I mean, basically, like what I was saying before, when people are searching, if you can give them somewhere to go, to sort of, whether it's healing, whether it's spiritual searching and spirit, if you can give some people a place to go where they can, if church doesn't work for them or for some other whatever. For me, luckily, when I was younger, I discovered surfing in the ocean. So for me, that was my spiritual place, being in the ocean on my own, and it still is to a certain degree. And I was lucky, but many of us aren't. We need places to go. We need community. We need to, and if something like, because we're talking a lot here about psychedelic therapy and psychedelic care, and I think possibly if we go one step before. I mean, we have anxiety, and then the psychedelic therapy helps treat that anxiety. But then we can also think about, what causes the anxiety. And I think if we have a place where we can spiritually go and to experience these things before we get the anxiety, that would be even more amazing, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because we don't know what causes the anxiety. I'm sure it's because of lack of, maybe it's feeling alone, or, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Luckily, I've never felt anxiety and before, but I can imagine that it's a whole bunch of stuff that could cause it. And I think it's never necessarily just one thing. I think it's a cumulative effect of diet, of health, of mental stress, of community, of whatever, and it creates an issue within somebody, and then that needs to be treated. So yeah, it's a really great subject, and I think I thank you and for doing this and your masters, and for pushing for change and pushing for debate and putting it in front of people to think about. And I think, particularly if you have children, if you're a responsible adult and you want to see these things looked at differently in the future, I think it's very important that you read up about it and put your signature on. All right.
Definitely. Thank you.
Bárbara, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And good luck with everything. Keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. Out. Ditch the plastic and the toxins. Mother's Earth dishwasher papers are made from non-toxic, eco-certified materials, so they're safer for your home, your health, your family, and the planet. No bulky plastic bottles, no waste, just clean dishes, shipped anywhere in Europe, and 3 times cheaper than those toxic tabs you buy in the supermarkets. Click the link in the show notes to start saving. Simple, secure currency transfers from once-in-a-lifetime property purchase of your dreams to everyday expenses. Currencies Direct helps you save time and money on international transfers. Rated excellent on Trustpilot with over 17,000 positive reviews. Spend like a local with their multi-currency MasterCard. Tap the link in the show notes to get started.
Walking past another conductor makes me wanna build a fusion reactor. Starting just with the basics wage, connecting poles and energy. Mom's face focus on geography, all the things I can learn with that machine. I need some fuel, I need a monster now. I'm the last and come the cloud, won't you?